Please welcome Michael Moss, investigative journalist, author of Salt, Sugar, Fat, How the Food Giants Hooked Us.
Oh my God, they really did take the podium away. I was just joking with them. There it is. But I did bring my secret weapon with me, the Prezi. And this one I love especially because it has the little Sherlock Holmes footprints in it. Because for me, crawling inside the underbelly of the processed food industry was like being inside a detective story. So I always love to see this one. And I'm magically tweeting during this talk, thanks to my assistant Talia Ralph sitting right there. You're welcome to join in. We are all social media. And thank you to that last panel. Thank you, Mark Bittman, for unhealthiest items in the grocery store, and a poster child for, let's say, exuberant snacking. And 5 years later, Nestle bought a canned drink that gave it the means to pursue one of the grimmest aspects of overeating. Every year, some 200,000 food-weary people have their stomachs surgically shrunk to lose weight. And canned drinks like this are the way they stay alive going forward. Gorge on Hot Pockets, drink your food. Get them fat, get them thin. Page 337 of my book, Salt, Sugar, Fat. Whoops, that's not it. That's the book. And I laugh every time I see this cover because the artist went into his favorite grocery store, took out his favorite products, tore out the labels, and you can still see the tear marks on it, and rearranged the letters to reflect what's really going on inside these products. Kind of, sort of like I do with the book. So imagine my surprise last summer when Nestle, the largest company of all, called me up from their fabulous headquarters on Lake Geneva and said, Michael, we want you to come talk to our private gathering of our 60-some research and development officials. And these are them in the room. And I'm going like, what? I mean, these are the people who invented and nurtured Nestle's 29 mega hits, what they called the billionaire brands. Nestle may have started out with infant formula, but as one of its scientists quipped to me, it's now a Swiss bank that prints food. And my oldest son, Aaron, said to me, Dad, I hope you're not wasting our money on a round trip ticket because they're going to like throw you off the Matterhorn. But no, they have a new leader of R&D, and he convinced me that they're changing. And he said, no, Michael, look, you need to come tell them all the bad stuff they did so they can work really hard at doing good stuff. So I got on a plane and I flew to Lake Geneva and I went to Nestle and I gave them the full hour book talk. And here's the Cliff Notes version, because I'm going to spare you that. The food giants have been working day and night to get us to not just like their products, but to want more and more of them. They engineer salt for the maximum of what they call the flavor burst. They pile in the fats like processed cheese for the silky, smooth, addictive quality of what they call the mouthfeel. And they perfect the amount of sweetness in products to create what they call the bliss point. Like this little bit of bliss point engineering that a legend in the industry, Howard Moskowitz, trained in experimental psychology at Harvard, did recently for Dr. Pepper in creating a new version of soda, in which he started with no less than 61 levels of sweetness, each one just slightly different than the next. Subjected those to some 3,000 consumer taste tests around the country, threw the data in his computer, did his high math regression analysis thing, and out came charts like this very one, where at the top of the curve is not like the dreaded middle C that kids get graded on in school. It's the perfect amount of sweetness, not too little, not too much, that will send us over the moon and their products flying off the shelf. And it's not just that they've engineered bliss points for soda, for cookies, for ice cream, things that we know should be sweet. It's that they've marched around the grocery store, as my dear scientist Julie Manella has taught me, adding sugar to everything that didn't used to be sweet anymore. Bread, yogurt, pasta sauce can have the equivalent of a couple of Oreo cookies with a sweetness in a tiny half-cup serving. And what this does is create an expectation in us that everything should be sweet. And it's especially hard for kids because when you drag their little butts over to the produce aisle, they panic. And we also know, though, from the memos and the white papers and the emails that I was able to gain access to, that the food giants have been acutely aware of this for years and years, even as they continued their own deep reliance on using salt, sugar, fat as this unholy trinity to make their products low-cost, convenient, and utterly irresistible. And we also know about the meeting that they had in 1999 when they gathered the heads of the largest food companies together to talk about none other than their own culpability in not just obesity, but other food-related health troubles. And up before them stood some of their own people pleading with them to start doing the right thing by consumers, by reformulating. They even showed them this very slide on the march of obesity over time in the country. And the food executives punted, basically defending salt, sugar, fat as the company jewels, arguing that there is no way they're going to mess around with those if it diminishes their sales in any way possible. And then I sat down to some mild applause, and the real fun began because I spent the next 2 days in Nestle roaming around their research and development facility with some of their 350 scientists. And I have to say, I was really dazzled by their efforts to, as the chief said, start doing good by consumers. They are taking salt out of the middle of their products and concentrating it on the top for maximum efficient flavor burst, but less salt. They are taking fat globules and making them thinner and broader so you still get that addictive mouthfeel of the silkiness, but for less fat glob. And they're taking sugar and finding non-calorie versions like that to put in their products. But here's the thing. And a bit of confession for me, because as much as I've been harping about their deep dependence on salt, sugar, fat, when you talk to nutritionists, the first things on their mind is not dealing with that necessarily, but to get us to eat more of this stuff. And the notion is, if we can pile vegetables and whole fruits on half of our plate, that junky stuff is going to start fading away, even a little bit sort of totally on its own. And this is a real problem for companies like Nestle, because creating a lower salt, sugar, fat hot pocket is child's play compared to stuffing that thing with broccoli or Brussels sprouts or zucchini. And it really begs the question, can they play a meaningful role in this amazing food moment we're in right now? Can they truly go into their labs and reinvent their products to make them low cost, convenient, tasty, but also good for you? And I happen to think there's some really powerful reasons to bet against them. They are incredibly risk averse. And to really learn this, I went to none other than Philip Morris, which for years and years, up until the early 2000s, was the largest food manufacturer in North America because of its acquisition of General Foods and then Kraft. And I learned so much from the tobacco guys. And I went to the former CEO, Jeffrey Bible, and I said, like, what's up with your food managers? I mean, why aren't they inventing new stuff? And he said, it's really frustrating. But as they explained to me, look, if you're a brand manager, it takes you millions of dollars to reformulate a new product. It takes you many more millions of dollars to do sort of a temporary trial on it, small trial, and then tens of millions of dollars to do a real rollout on it. And 9 out of 10 times, that's going to fail. And so their jobs are on the line. The companies are incredibly risk averse. They also are deeply dependent on what they call kind of the least cost formulation, so that trading wholesome ingredients for cheaper ingredients, the cheaper one is always going to win out. They're also starting to pack their bags and move overseas. Having conquered North America, you're starting to see American processed foods in Ghana, in Brazil, even in France, where people sort of still kind of leave their guard down and aren't as sensitive as we are in this country. And lastly, they are committed to making money. I mean, that's what the companies are all about. And it's a very difficult thing for them to sort of get over the hurdle of figuring out how to make money with healthier products. But, and here's one of the most hopeful signs that I've been seeing, is that while even the food giants really never really invented stuff, people inside those companies did. Sometimes against the very sort of bureaucratic inertia within those companies. And some of those same people, the food product engineers, the marketing people, the executives, are now switching sides. This is a huge moment we're in right now with food. More and more people are caring about what they put in their bodies. They are making purchase decisions that's taking a toll on the profits. One after another of the largest companies went before analysts early this year, reported dismal profits, and the more honest, forthright among them accredited that to consumers losing trust in their products. And up in this arena has come this upwelling of startup ventures. People are convinced they can come up with better for you products. They have great energy, they have smart ideas, and increasingly they're starting to get some help from these former food industry insiders. We have people like Ed Martin, used to work for Kellogg's. He was part of the marketing analyst. He was part of the team that invented the dessert breakfast cereal. And because they couldn't add real marshmallow goo to the cereal, because goo and mushiness is the death of cereal, which has to be crispy, they deployed what they call permission, which is basically their view that we give them permission just to simulate real ingredients if they can get close to the real thing with some flavor and some taste. Ed has gone to work for a company called Zaycon Foods, which is delivering meats to consumers at wholesale prices. And to get over kind of this image of a guy throwing chicken off the back of the truck, Ed dipped into his bag of tricks from the food industry and came out with the halo effect. He got one of the biggest, most trusted brands in North America, Chicken Soup for the Soul, to endorse Zaycon, and they're going great guns now across the country with that. Ed also has a great eye for new inventions. He told me about this thing, container cargoes, where you can grow lettuce and vegetables. The heat from the vegetables will heat the whole thing up, and you can plunk these things down in any food desert in the country and have instant access to those great vegetables we all should be eating about. We also have Jeffrey Dunn, former president of Coca-Cola for North America. Jeff Dunn was nicknamed Mr. Body Bags for his fierce, warfare with Pepsi. His dad also was responsible for getting Coca-Cola in many of the stadiums in the United States as an incredibly clever marketing technique. Jeff is a big Dodgers fan. I bet him on the recent Dodgers-Mets series, by the way. And we didn't bet money, we bet a home-cooked meal. So next time I'm in Los Angeles, guess who's cooking me dinner? Jeffrey Dunn, who is a great cook, by the way. Jeff left Coca-Cola and went to work selling baby carrots, but not as mushy, gushy, healthy for you carrots. He went into his bag of tricks and pulled up the notion that we can sell these things as junk food. Exciting, jazzy, just the same thing that sort of get into kids' brains. We also have Sarah Brito. Is Sarah here today? I lost track of her. Sarah was at an ad agency working for Mac and Cheese Craft when she had one of these wonderful moments that ad people get. She was out canvassing a neighborhood, asking people why they liked mac and cheese, and she was with the family and kind of inadvertently told them that their neighbors also loved mac and cheese, and their faces kind of light up. It was like this little unshared secret between them. And so Sarah came up with the slogan, "You know you love it." Huge thing for mac and cheese. Sarah has now gone to work for an organization called Chefs Collaborative, which is helping chefs and other professionals change menus, change lives, as her slogan for the new group says, to create better restaurant food. And we also have Bob Drain, inventor of the Lunchables. I just spent a whole chapter on the Lunchables for all of the consumer psychology that went into that. Just briefly, when they moved from cracker and cheese to pizza Lunchables, they told the moms about that, and they said, "Are you out of your minds? There's no way my kid's gonna like a piece of cold crust and cheese and this and that." And then they went to the kids and they said, "Oh yeah, that's great." And that's when the CEO of Kraft sort of famously said, Lunchables really isn't about the food as much as it is about the empowerment. And so they came up with that slogan for the kids. All day you got to do what they say, but lunchtime is all yours. And the great thing about these guys, and Bob Drain now is working at his company called Growth Catalyst, doing things like designing thinner cheese and microwavable meals with real vegetables in them, and salsa with more mainstream flavors that can have broader sales. And the great thing about these guys is that they're all over the place, quietly working behind the scenes. This is Bob doing his better thing for you. Quietly working behind the scenes. This moment for food, and you really have to grant it to these upstarts. I mean, they're so much fun. I mean, what would you rather have? Rice Krispie cereal with bacon fat added in it to make it hipster? I am not kidding. This happened to me 2 weeks ago at an event in Brooklyn. Or right down the aisle, would you rather have a ketchup that you can actually really count as a serving of vegetables, as one famous person was insisting years ago? Because these guys added all of these vegetables to it, and they're both military veterans pounding away at this. Would you rather have a vending machine with slightly less bad for you food, or a vending machine selling fresh salads? Would you rather have a Ruth Reichel meal, or a meal in a bottle? All right, I'm messing with you. But look, nobody said this sort of food movement isn't going to be messy. Purists, be warned. One of the other dangerous things about dealing with these insiders is that they're really have this hard-bitten language of marketing. But I'm actually convinced that stealing tricks from the food giants to sell better for you, healthier foods can work, because I did it myself. I got Sarah Brito and an ad agency that works for Coca-Cola to design for me an advertising campaign for a part of the grocery store that typically doesn't get any marketing at all. The produce section, I got them to agree to let me inside their Mad Men and Mad Men Women world as they did this. and to videotape it, so I have a couple of snippets to tell you. And I also insisted that they try to do this campaign for what is one of the most arguably difficult vegetables to sell people, with a lot of detractors, including one very famous one.
I do not like broccoli, and I haven't liked it since I was a little kid. And my mother made me eat it. And I'm president of the United States, and I'm not going to eat any more broccoli.
In spite of its well-known health benefits, broccoli is not a popular vegetable. It was derided by President George Bush, and it's pretty much ignored by the rest of us. I'm Michael Moss, and I write about the intersection of food and marketing for the New York Times. I'm trying to answer a question. What would it take to get people to eat better? The advertising firm Victors and Spoils, whose previous clients include Quiznos, General Mills, and Coca-Cola, took on the challenge pro bono. Okay, at one point they go to me, okay, Michael, we're going to pick a fight with another thing in the grocery store. And I thought, oh, fantastic, potato chips, my downfall. And they go, no, you're forgetting your own chapter on Coke and Pepsi. When they fought each other, all of their sales rose in the soda aisle. We're going to pick a fight with somebody else.
So our key consumer insight that we're working with is that everyone is currently talking about kale. It is everywhere. This is Bon Appetit magazine. There's a whole section on the vegetable revolution in here, and there's a timeline around when all of these vegetables had their it moments. Broccoli is not on this list. There's nothing new or exciting to say about broccoli. Part of our challenge is going to be how to change the visual communication, the visual style of broccoli in culture.
That wall over there says broccoli isn't exactly that cool. But maybe there's something cool in not being cool.
Like, you don't want to dupe anyone, but maybe, maybe they're in on the joke. I mean, the fact that broccoli's having its own campaign, I think you can have a lot of fun with.
The idea of broccoli who cares. So you're basically saying, I'd like you to live longer. Here's something that's going to do that. So in essence, broccoli is probably a better gift than flowers.
Is it a brocade?
Oh.
That gets a little lost, but that was his answer. I mean, this is how these guys get their creative juices going, right? It's like crack jokes like that. Well, so here's what happened. I don't know how we did this, Jerry, but we put this thing on the cover of the New York Magazine. It was totally made up. It was unreal, but it went there. And then and this was, by the way, why the kale people hated me. God, did I hear from them. I'm still hearing from them. It was just National Kale Day the other day, and I was, the emails. But here's the amazing thing. It went from being fake to real. Some Yale students picked up on it and did a little experiment in that great food desert called New Haven, and they doubled broccoli sales. The largest broccoli grower on the East Coast adopted the alpha vegetable part of the campaign, which is just fantastic, taking the wallflower broccoli and turning into this, so assertive. And the Let's Move Obama people have run with it and now have the FNV campaign where they're using celebrities to hawk produce like they hawk junk food. And I really think that this could change not just the produce section of the grocery store, but maybe even...
So what happens when 3 West Virginia Walmarts decide to take the candy and chips out of one checkout aisle per store and replace them with fruit and other healthy items?
You get the picture. West Virginia is doing that, putting fruits and vegetables in the checkout lanes of the grocery stores. This insider movement is so much fun that I really can't help myself. And so when Karen Watson, a food marketing expert, told me about the guy who invented that farmer's fridge thing that I showed you there, I couldn't help myself. And he's actually with us here now. Would you mind coming up and joining us, Luke, for a second? His name is Luke Saunders. And when I heard about this, I picked up the phone and I called Bob Drain, Mr. Lunchables, to see what Bob Drain could do for Luke's farmer's fridge. But first, tell us just a couple of things about yourself. How old are you?
29.
29. And what did you do before the farmer's fridge?
I was a technical salesman for a metal coatings company.
Wow. And that took you into factories?
Yeah, so I was going into food factories all over the Midwest, seeing how they make granola bars, cereal, waffles, you name it.
And what product kind of most impressed you about the prowess of the processed food industry?
Yeah, I had made this really long trip down to Kentucky, and I went into the factory, and they were explaining this problem they were having with a dumpling product. It was a peanut butter and jelly dumpling. And I couldn't help myself. The first thing I said to the guy was, well, who are you selling this to? I've never seen it before. And it turns out they couldn't get people to buy it at the grocery store, so they were selling it to schools.
That's great. Wow, wow. All right, so Bob Drain got all excited, and he spent the last week sort of plugging away, and I have to apologize. Bob is really into sort of PowerPoints, and he sent me like a million PowerPoints sort of analyzing the farmer's fridge and what have you, pulling his stuff from the Lunchables. And just, we just have a second to look at this, but this is sort of what Bob Drain is all about, and the food industry. Who's the target? What's the moment, right? That mom is that crazy 7 a.m. Honing in on messaging and targeting. Those are kind of the two things. And so Bob had huge amounts of praise for the farmer's fridge, and I think you have 30 now, and you're looking to go to 100. But Bob did notice that you are, one of the places you've put them are 7-Elevens, which is fantastic because everybody knows they need better food. But Bob thought, wait a minute. People drive to a 7-Eleven. They can easily just get back in their car and go to a Taco Bell for lunch. That's a really difficult sort of market to get. And he starts talking about, where could we get a more captive audience? And Bob is thinking, big office buildings, workers can't get out, they're stuck at the vending machine for lunch. Farmer's fridge to the rescue. And I never really kind of asked you what you thought about that, but going forward, is that sort of clicking in your head?
Yeah, I think we've noticed that places where people are really stuck, they don't have healthy options, this is something that they want, and it works great.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you, Luke. Yeah, good luck with you.
Much.
Yeah, it's really great.
Thanks.
And lastly, sort of this talk about captive audience and targeting and the language that the processed food industry uses to go after consumers is really unsettling. But I'm absolutely convinced that making more money is the thing that's going to drive so many of these startup ventures to success, because many of them are going to fail. Because if we can get peas to sell themselves, we don't even need a first lady pushing peas. If we can get, if we get the farmers excited about making money with peas, if we can get the Lukes of the world to put peas on their salad, if we can get frozen food makers to flash freeze peas to make them affordable to people throughout the winter, that's a really beautiful thing. And I wanted to thank you so much.